everybody. What's going on tonight? Welcome to the Minutes with Milo show, live on YouTube from the great studio above the garage. That's right, above the garage. Whose garage? I don't know. Can't say. Can't wake them up though. Might get run out. So, what are we talking about tonight? We're just going to be cloning around. Cloning around. Get it? No, probably. Probably not. But I thought it might be a good, what is that, a pun? Pun like clowning around? How come I don't have my, where is it? Where is my chat? There it is. Is anybody in the chat that I haven't had turned on to see? Nope. There it is on YouTube. I don't see anybody in the chat on YouTube. That's all right. That's okay. What I'm planning on doing is cloning my viewers time after time after time after time. And then sooner or later, you know, I have like a bunch of viewers, live viewers. I appreciate everybody that tunes in live. Appreciate everybody that watches the videos afterwards. And I appreciate it if you've ever watched or listened to the podcast. So you can catch the podcast on Amazon or Spotify for podcasters. You can do it there, listen to it. You don't have to watch the videos. Even though I try to keep kind of in the back of my mind, how's this going to play without any video? There are some times when I have dead space, just because I'm reading. And sometimes I read, a lot of times I read out loud just because I want everybody to know what I'm reading. Because you can follow along if you're watching the video because I share my screen, right? But if you're listen to a podcast as you're traveling down the highway to Utah, Wyoming, Montana, I don't know where you might be going. Walmart. If you're listening, you can't watch the screen, right? So I try to read what I'm reading when I'm reading. I try to read aloud what I'm reading when I'm reading. Anyhow, cloning. All right, so my little snippet on the video here is why should we be cloning things? And then the posts, if you saw my posts, like on Facebook and Instagram, it says, why do scientists believe they're smarter than nature, but yet they say mankind is killing the planet? Those are all good questions in my book because I made them up and I asked them. I'm not going to answer them. Maybe just delve into them a little more about why would you say that? Why do you think why do I think that scientists think they're smarter than nature? And with everything on the show, I'm not an expert. These are my opinions. I'm going to, if you don't like them, then leave me a comment. Say, I don't like your opinion. Then watch the next show and maybe you'll like that opinion. I got all kinds of opinions. So these are my opinions. They're not based on anything more than 5 or 10 minutes worth of research on the internet, and a lot of times from Wikipedia. So I am probably well uninformed. That's probably the best way to put my show, is well uninformed show. Wow, that was a noise. So I'm drinking me some mint tea tonight. Mint tea. And it looks quite hot. I don't think you can see. Hey, Robert. All right. Robert's already jumping in here. We ain't even got to the meat of the story, and he's already jumping in here on the dodo birds. Probably should have put some honey in this one. I had some last night, had some honey in it. And I like mint tea, but it was a little sweeter with honey in it. Go figure. Uncloned honey. And we'll touch on the dodo bird, Roberto. Did I grow mint? My wife has grown mint, but this is not homemade. Let me do something here real quick. And I cannot type without looking at my fingers. I can, but it's not pretty. It's like I can paint with my eyes closed, but it's still not pretty. So I try to make things a little bit better by looking at what I'm typing. All right, let's look at that one. Just a little follow-up on my other show. I don't remember which one it was. The one about the Yupon holly, the only caffeinated plant that's native. There we go. Native to North America or East Tennessee or Southeast United States, whatever you want to call that. Little follow-up to that one. It was show 128 in the Minutes with Milo live videos. I've been Yupon holly, to go back a little bit, is an evergreen. I learned this myself last show. It's an evergreen. So even though this is wintertime, you could possibly pick it out. And I was going to try to find some and then identify it with an app that my wife has on her phone. So I thought I had found some because they said it was a shrub and it was used in landscaping. So I've been keeping my eye out on these places, and I found a place that had what it is. It's an evergreenish plant. Sometimes the leaves turned red, but it had red berries on it, like the Yupon holly, in my mind, like they would look. So I stopped and got a thing of the plant, and it's actually called, Craig knows the real scientific name for it, but heavenly bamboo. There it is. Heavenly bamboo is what I found. So I'm still on the hunt for in the wild Yupon holly, so I can try to make some tea out of the leaves. You don't use the beans or the berries. No, the leaves. So it's not a coffee, it is a tea. In my book, it's a tea because you use the leaves, not the berries. Anywho, I may end up having to go to Lowe's or one of these garden shops and buying a plant because did a little more research on. I know I'm not on track, but anyway, bear with me. I'm going to find you some sassafras, and I'm going to shove it. Oh, wait a minute. It rhymes with sassafras, just so you can say you have it. There's Clell, late as usual, but very dependable. Better late than never. That's what I'm saying. So I may have to break down and buy some commercially because we looked at it, and what we looked at today, me and Craig looked at a picture of it was actually like a hedge, and I didn't think it was more. I thought it was more. It is a bush, but they trim it like hedges in some places. So I'm just going to have to probably break down and buy a bush to have it. So anyway, cloning. So I think Robert tipped me off to this today at lunch. Somebody, and I know who, I'm not going to name any names right now, is wanting to bring back a woolly mammoth. Why? First thing, why do we feel like we need to be cloning things? Why? It's extinct, okay? Right. Maybe there's a reason. It's not supposed to be here. And so it's extinct. We didn't do it. This is one time the scientists can't blame mankind for killing off, some type of animal. We didn't do it. This is a whole nature thing. But there's scientists out there, I think, they believe they know better than nature. And nature was wrong in making these things extinct. Oh, it's an accident. Okay. Well, Robert brings up the elk is not extinct, though. All right. So I don't even think it's endangered. They don't live in this area anymore, and they're reintroducing them to this area, which is causing running into a whitetail is bad enough. My truck took a big hit on a small one. Okay. Can you imagine hitting a small elk? I mean, come on, people. The deer population is out of control already because everybody doesn't want to kill Bambi. They're being slaughtered along the road. Go out on the interstate, drive down the interstate, and count between here and Knoxville how many dead carcasses you see. They're getting killed, and then they're laying out on the road. Yeah, okay. So the vultures get to eat, and the carrion bugs and all that stuff. But a lot of times they don't die quick. They get hit, they suffer, they bound off 300 or 400 yards, and then they lay down and they suffer. Deer population's out of control because we're afraid we're going to make them extinct. Anyway, woolly mammoths. Why do we need to clone a woolly mammoth, dude? Why? Why do we need to bring it back? Talked one time, I could look it up, it'd take me a while, about metal detecting. Okay? People don't want you digging up history, man. Don't dig up the history. Leave it alone. Who are you to dig up history? I'd rather dig up a coin from 1776 than clone a woolly mammoth and, let it sloth around on Earth when it's not supposed to. And it's not even a real, is it a real woolly mammoth? I don't know, man. I don't know. They've cloned sheep, okay? What is the long-term effects on the sheep? Does it live as long as it's, I wouldn't even call it a twin. It's donor. Does it live as long as its donor? Is it as healthy as its donor? Is it exactly like its donor? You see what I'm saying? What are the long-term effects? Let's find out of all this genetic tinkering what some of the long-term effects might be. Robert says he agrees with me with why do we want to do it, and I guess because we can. Well, can we? That's one of the things I'm sure they're wanting to probably prove is that they can. You don't know if they can until they do it. And then how well can they do it? Will it take, 30, 40, 100 malformed, misformed, have to put them to sleep woolly mammoths that are, because what they're trying to do, we'll look at it. We'll get into it and I'll stop preaching. Let's look at this thing. Let's hide that. Let's bring that up. Is this where we want? That's it there. Okay. Got that. Shrink me down. There we go. Okay. So I was checking back. What is cloning? Oh, that's not it. What is cloning? Cloning are organisms that are exact genetic copies. Every single bit of their DNA is identical. Clones can happen naturally. Identical twins are just one of many examples, and that is not true. Okay, and I'll take that back. I have twins. when they were born, we sent off saliva swabs just to see. And according to then, when the tests were, and this has been a couple of decades ago, they were like 96, 97% identical. Okay? That's a lot. To sit here and say that clones are organisms that are exact, that means 100% genetic copies, every single bit of their DNA is identical. I don't think that is true with twins. They call them identical twins, but they're not identical. I mean, any parent that has twins can tell you, once you get that in your head, you'll always be able to tell them apart because they're differences. Even though genetic makeup says they're like 96, 97%, not 100, not 100. Now, if we had them tested now, would they say they're 100%? I still doubt it. I still doubt it, because they are different. So that I have a question about already. Or they can be made in the lab. Below, find out how many natural identical twins are similar to and different from clones made through modern cloning techniques. So how is cloning done? Many people first heard of cloning when Dolly the sheep showed up on the scene in '97. Artificial cloning technologies have been around for much longer than Dolly, though. There are two ways to make exact genetic copies of an organism in a lab: artificial embryo twinning and somatic cell nuclear transfer. Oh, it's getting deep. I don't want to get too deep. All right. Is cloning an organism the same as cloning a gene? You may have heard about researchers cloning or identifying genes that are responsible for various medical conditions or traits. What's the difference? When scientists clone an organism, they are making an exact genetic copy of the whole organism. When scientists clone a gene, they isolate and make exact copies of just one of the organism's genes. Cloning a gene usually involves copying the DNA sequence of that gene into a smaller, more easily manipulated piece of DNA, such as a plasmid. This process makes it easy to study the function of individual genes in the laboratory. All right, so what are they planning on doing about cloning a woolly mammoth? So I don't think they're going to clone the whole thing. Okay? I think, and I read this article, and this is from NPR, nationalpublicradio.org. This article is written by Scott Newman in 2021. So it's a little bit dated, but I'm just hearing about this really today. I mean, I've heard some other genetic things. Like one of the things that goes on a lot, of course, is gene splicing on plants to make it more drought resistant or to produce more corn or 5 ears instead of 2 ears, those kind of things. Which, once they get started and it works for corn or it works for beans or it works for celery or it works for, peanuts or whatever it might be, is they're genetically manipulating these things to make the plant sturdier or stronger or the fruit taste better or, last long without rotting. That bolsters their confidence that they can do this with anything, man. The sky's the limit. This stuff's so easy. We got it down. We could do this in a coffee pot in the break room. That's, in my mind, that's where they go with it. So, they think the leap from corn to woolly mammoth, is, 2 steps away. That's in my mind, my opinion. And they've been doing that for a long time. People are eating genetically modified foods, don't even realize it. one of the things I know they do is they modify genetics in mosquitoes. And why is because they've figured out a way through genetics that keeps I think it introduces like a non-reproductive male into the area, but they don't know that, so they go through all that stuff, and this mates. I think this is the way it mates with mosquitoes and this stuff, and they never get fertilized, and therefore the mosquito population drops. Uh, and there's another one where there's an enzyme that certain mosquitoes carry that makes them sterile. And if you introduce that and it gets into the gene pool, then that makes more and more mosquitoes sterile. I think that's another thing that they end up doing. But anyway, they're doing this in mosquito-ridden areas to try to not use spray. Okay. But that's still not cloning a woolly mammoth. You know, it's still not doing that. But what they're wanting to do in this article talks about here using recovered DNA to can you go away? What's this up here? Using recovered DNA to genetically resurrect an extinct species. The central idea behind the Jurassic Park films. Clell had mentioned Jurassic Park. Yeah, it didn't end well. Clell says, I'm a twin. Glad I ain't like him. Or maybe he's glad you're not like him. Did you ever think about that? But have you ever been tested to see just how identical you are genetically? And see, you know, how identical are you? You know, I guarantee you're not 100% identical. So, this idea may be moving closer to reality with the creation of this week of a new company that aims to bring back woolly mammoths thousands of years after the last giants disappeared from the Arctic tundra. Flush with a $15 million infusion of funding, Harvard University genetics professor George Church, known for his pioneering work in genome sequencing and gene splicing, hopes the company can usher in an era where mammoths walk the Arctic tundra again. He and other researchers also hope that a revived species can play a role in combating what? What? Combating what? Climate change. Climate change. Here's what I think I want everybody to do to combat climate change. I want everybody to think in a year, I want everybody to eat a whole cow. Let's eat a whole cow to help save the planet. Because, cow farts, they're killing us. So let's eat a whole cow in a year, or maybe less. Maybe we could, I don't know, man, could we eat 2 cows in a year? Could we? To help save the planet? That makes as much sense as resurrecting a lost species of animal through cloning to help combat climate change. Yeah, there we go, Robert. Robert's on what I'm thinking. If a cow fart's bad, what's a woolly mammoth fart going to do? These things are like 10 feet at the shoulders, right? Huge, huge things. They eat all kinds of plant life. Now, wait a minute. Plant life, I'm going to go back to my science in junior high. Photosynthesis, what does it take to make a plant grow? CO2. What do trees breathe in? CO2. What do they expel? Oxygen. In with the bad, out with the good. Well, what happens to these woolly mammoths start trampling down trees and grass and all that stuff that eat and survive on carbon dioxide, CO2. Easy peasy. Definitely one cow, I think. I'm just wondering. Man, I don't know. I don't know if I could eat a whole cow or not. You know how much meat that would be? That would be a lot. My flatulence would probably counteract anything I could save by eating the cow. Anyway, this dude at Harvard, George Church, and his is one of the. I'm just making generalities, like I said. Probably a super, super smart dude. Because if he's a professor and pioneering work in the genome sequencing and gene splicing, then he's got to be a brainiac. He's got to be really smart. But does he think he's smarter than nature? Does he think he can do it better than nature could? Well, obviously he does, because he thinks he can gene splice and sequence genes to make better things, right? To make better things. Even though a lot of scientists will say humans are killing the planet because we do dumb stuff like drive cars, eat meat, raise cattle. You know, we cut down trees to make lumber and build houses out of. We're the cause of the planet crash, all that stuff. Very valid points on a lot of that, right? Very valid points. But then what do they think? They're a better humankind, they're a better mankind, that they know how to save the planet by monkeying around with genetics of these extinct animals. So I think what he's doing here, he hopes the company can usher in a new era where mammoths walk the Arctic tundra again. He and other researchers also hope that a revived species can play a role in combating climate change. I'm sorry, I read that before. We are working towards bringing back species who left an ecological void as they went extinct. The company Colossal said in answer to questions emailed by NPR, as Colossal actively pursues the conservation and preservation of endangered species, we are identifying species that can be given a new set of tools from their extinct relatives to survive in new environments that desperately need them. Okay. I'm not. Okay. Yeah, Robert says, save the earth, the heck with humans. Let's talk about AI for a second. Will they come up with that idea? Is that where AI would take us? If AI could, well, it's going to know. I guarantee you AI is going to be something, because this was like in 2021. It's 2024 now. AI is coming around. If they teach AI about the genome and splicing and cloning and say, hey, can we make a better woolly mammoth? It's going to come up with an answer. Is it going to be a right answer? Is it going to be a wrong answer? I don't know. Will one of its answers be, to save the earth, we need to, cut in half the human population? I don't know. Maybe. So, let me read this part of it again. Let's see. We are identifying species that can be given a new set of tools from their extinct relatives. All right. So I think what he's talking about, AI will be awesome. Awesomeness. Okay. All right. Robert says AI will be awesomeness. Well, we may live today to see the awesomeness, maybe. So when I read that, we are identifying species that can be given a new set of tools from their extinct relatives to survive in new environments that desperately need them. So, all right, picture an elephant, and it needs longer hair. So what I think they're planning on doing is sequencing the genome from a woolly mammoth and pinpointing what gives it longer hair, and then plugging that into today's elephants and see if that works. And then apparently woolly mammoths had a hemoglobin in their blood that resisted cold temperatures. So I think what they'll do is they'll pick that out and they'll put it in today's elephants. So they might not just take a sample of DNA from a woolly mammoth and just create a whole new woolly mammoth. They may start out, and this is I think what they're talking about here, is they will start out by just gene splicing in certain things in today's elephants to making a mock woolly mammoth, or making similar things to a woolly mammoth out of today's elephants. Why? Why do we want elephants that can survive in the Arctic tundra? Are there people going to live up there and eat these elephants that are surviving in the Arctic tundra? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe they're hoping to take people up to live in the Arctic, and they're going to use woolly mammoths as pack animals. That's what they do with elephants, like in Asia, right? In India, they work those things to death over there. You know, toting and pulling and hauling and pulling things around, lifting things up the trunk and pulling carts and all that kind of stuff. Seriously, I think AI will help a lot thinking outside the box. I don't know. What do we need to think AI think about? I'm just wondering there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. Right? All computer programming, if they've gone anywhere and talked about, running a program or writing a program or putting things into a database, anything, you put garbage into a computer, you'll get garbage back. So who's teaching AI? The internet. Okay. But there are people out there that are doing this AI. They want to limit misinformation. They don't want to teach AI the wrong things. Well, who decides that? Who's deciding what is wrong to teach the AI? And therefore, they can just carve out anything they think is wrong and teach their AI certain things that they believe to be correct. So, who's teaching the teacher? That's the problem. Who's watching the hen house? The foxes. So, Facebook and TikTok. Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. So, if they are just taking right now these genes and putting them into today's elephants, where are they getting the samples? Well, they're discovering, not all the time, but apparently more so every decade or something like that, fully intact, solidly frozen, I think Robert mentioned it today, with blood in their veins, woolly mammoths in these frozen tundras. And I've touched on this one other show, maybe a couple other shows. There's been people that claim I did it on that one show, they claim they've eaten woolly mammoth steaks. Now, that one was debunked, that it wasn't woolly mammoth. But there's been other reports, and there's been guys that say, well, no, I uncovered the woolly mammoth, I cut it up, and me and my buddies ate woolly mammoth steaks. There's your DNA. They're getting DNA. They, come across it. It's in bone marrow. It's everything. It's in everything living. And, it's not, I guess it degrades, but I don't know. To be sure what's being processed is actually a hybrid created using a gene editing tool. The splices bits of DNA recovered from frozen mammoth species into that of Asian elephants, the mammoth's closest living relative, the resulting animal known as a mammophant would look and presumably behave much like a woolly mammoth. So I'll just get into why they think mammoths could reverse climate change. Church and others believe that resurrecting the mammoth would plug a hole in the ecosystem left by their decline about 10,000 years ago, although some isolated populations are thought to have remained in Siberia until the 1700 BC. The largest mammoth stood more than 10 feet at the shoulder and are believed to have weighed as much as 15 tons. Mammoth once scraped away layers of snow that cold air could reach the soil and maintain the permafrost. After they disappeared, the accumulating snow with its insulating properties meant the permafrost began to warm, releasing greenhouse gases. Church and others contend. They argue that returning mammoths, or at least hybrids that would fill the same ecological niche to the Arctic, could reverse that trend. With the introduction of the woolly mammoth, we believe our work will restore the degraded ecosystem to a richer one, similar to the tundra that existed nearly 10,000 years ago. So this is another area where I believe he thinks he's smarter than nature. How does he know the tundra of 10,000 years ago is better than what we have now? Core samples are drilling down. They're doing all this experimenting stuff. And they're saying, well, back 10,000 years ago, this is better. Why? How? What made it better? How do they know? There was less everything 10,000 years ago except woolly mammoths. And if they think scraping down, let's see. Facebook, TikTok, Robert, well, stupidity's abundant. Robert says, more wolves and bears and wolverines. Well, apparently they're expecting these woolly mammoths to scrape snow away. Why don't they just get a daggone snow blower, the size of my house or your house or the size of, a football stadium, and go out there and scrape this snow away. Make it electric. Electric's all the best, especially in frozen tundra. Okay, haven't you heard? Anyway, figure out a way. If you think this is all grand and dandy, take you a 100-acre or a 1,000-acre patch of the tundra and mow the snow off of it. Let's see what happens. Why do you think that an elephant infused with woolly mammoth DNA is going to say all of a sudden, yo, man, I feel like going up to Siberia and scratching down to the grassy soil underneath foots and, of ice and snow. Let's just go do it. Clails, I'm an Indian outlaw, half parakeet and hot dog, or whatever Tim McGraw said. That counts as cloning. Yeah. So why don't they just do that? We believe our work will restore this degraded ecosystem to a richer one because we're smarter than nature. That's why. Love DeLon, a professor in evolutionary genetics at Stockholm-based Center for Paleogenetics, is skeptical of the claim. This person says, I personally do not think that this will have any measurable impact on the rate of climate change in the future. Even if we were to succeed, he tells NPR, there is virtually no evidence in support of the hypothesis that trampling of a very large number of mammoths would have an impact on climate change, and it could equally well, in my view, have a negative effect on the temperatures. Robert's on a roll. He says bringing back the mammoths will reduce violence, or maybe even eliminate it. The techniques might be better used to help endangered species. But even if the researchers at Colossal can bring back mammoths, and that is not certain, the obvious question is, should they? I can see some reason to do the first steps where you are tinkering with cell lines and editing the genomes Deline says, I think there's a lot of technological development that can be done. We can learn a lot about how to edit genomes, and that could really be useful for endangered species today. Joseph Fredrickson, a vertebrate paleontologist and director of the Welts Earth Science Museum in Manashaw, Wisconsin, was inspired as a child by the original Jurassic Park movie. But even he thinks that the more important goal should be preventing extinction rather than reversing it. So I don't think I'm wrong in this. Robert wants to get to the dodos. All right, we're into it 40 minutes. We'll get to the dodos. In a second. We'll get to the dodos. Let's see. Preventing extinction rather than reversing it. They didn't just dwindle out because of some disease. They were frozen, and one of the reasons they're finding all these is the carcasses. I don't even know if you call them carcasses. They're dead, but they were frozen almost like packaging meat. I mean, how can you still have blood that's viable to get DNA out of if it's rotted and decayed and, tore up? So they froze at a very, very quick rate. They just didn't die one at a time and fall over and decay, for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then snow covered them up and they finally froze. I think they were frozen not instantaneously, but very, very quickly to preserve them as well as some of these are preserved. So no amount of genetic messing around can prevent that kind of extinction, even for us. So if you can create a mammoth or at least an elephant that looks a good copy of a mammoth that can survive in Siberia, you could do quite a bit for a white rhino or the giant panda, so this guy tells NPR, especially for animals that have dwindling genetic diversity. Fredrickson said adding older genes from the fossil record or entirely new genes could increase the health of those populations. Speaking with NPR in 2015, Beth Shapiro, a paleogeneticist at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and author of How to Clone a Mammoth, The Science of De-Extinction, said emphatically, I don't want to see mammoths come back. It's never going to be possible to create a species that is 100% identical, she said. But what if we could use that technology not to bring back mammoths, but to save elephants? So there are voices of reason out there in the scientific community that don't think potentially they're smarter than nature. So, there's hope. Let's see, predicting 6-year timeline would be exceptionally short. All of this, of course, assumes that producing a mammoth ant is even possible. Colossus says it hopes to produce an embryo in 6 years. So this was, when did I say this article was? It was written in 21, so 27 in 3 years on where they're at right now. Colossus says it hopes to produce an but with an estimate 1.4 million individual genetic mutations separately, the ancient creature from ancient elephants, the task of gene splicing could prove a mammoth undertaking. Perhaps an even bigger obstacle might be developing an artificial uterus for the gestating the embryos. Even Church acknowledges that this might not be so easy. Among other things, the company plans to create a pumping system for exchange of gas, nutrient, and waste metabolites and umbilical blood supply with the goal of carrying a woolly mammoth embryo to term in vitro. Researchers have been working on just a device, but technical hurdles remain. So Clell wants to know if the dodo good to eat. And Robert says he's heard that they are, and Clell wants to try it. Let's see. What happened to Let's go back. What did I say? Who is cloning a dodo bird? Don't get Robert's dodo bird in here. Dodo bird, dodo bird, something. Again, Colossus Bioscience, the gene editing company involved, has already embarked on projects to revive the woolly mammoth and the thylacine. But the dodo would be the first bird, which is significant as it means changing the gene editing technique to accommodate an external egg. Well, well, well. Let's look at the Smithsonian magazine for this little gem. There you go, Robert. Look. A face only a mama dodo could love. Let me get it up there so you can see it. Continue without supporting us. Yes. The dodo, now extinct, weighed about 50 pounds, had blue-green feathers, and couldn't fly. Let's see, when was this one written? This was 2023, February 2nd, 2023. So this is just a year old. Over the past year and a half, a biotechnology company has made headlines with its ambitious plan to genetically recreate two members of the extinct species, the woolly mammoth and the thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger. What? On Tuesday, the company called Colossus Bioscience added a third animal to its de-extinction bucket list, the dodo bird. I've always been fascinated with the dodo, said Beth Shapiro, the lead. Oh, this is an interesting turn of events. Beth Shapiro is the lead paleontologist at Colossus now. Remember? She was the chick that basically said something, I won't say negative, but questioning. Let's see what she said about back in 2021 about the woolly mammoth thing. Speaking with NPR in 2015, Beth Shapiro, a paleontologist at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and author of How to Clone a Mammoth, The Science of De-Extinction, said emphatically, I don't want to see mammoths come back. It's never going to be possible to create a species that is 100% identical, she said, but what if we could use the technology not to bring back mammoths, but to save elephants? So now, apparently, Beth is in bed with Colossus. The lead pathologist Colossus tells Vice's Becky Ferreira it's the poster child in a sad way for how human habitat alteration can drive species to extinction. Now see, this is our fault this time. Once dodos were denizens of the Indian Ocean island of whatever, but human explorers and their introduced animals hunted them to extinction by the end of the 17th century. Now Colossal claims it can bring back the large flightless bird by editing the genomes of living relatives. In this way, it might engineer an animal that fills an ecological role similar to the dodos. So here again, they want to plug this hole that's left void by this extinct species. When what makes them think it needs to be plugged? What's happening is what's leaking out of this hole that needs us to plug it. I don't understand. It's the same thing with the carrier pigeon. One of the things I did, before was talked about how the carrier pigeon was hunted into extinction. Why don't you bring back the carrier pigeon? See, back in the day, they stopped this big dam project, hydroelectric dam project or something like that, because of the snail darter. Well, shoot, now they could just do that project and save the snail darter through cloning. They could turn sardines into snail darters. De-extinction is a fairy tale of science, Jeremy Alston, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Adelaide in Australia, told the Sydney Morning Herald. Lima Mannix last year. It's pretty clear to people like me that the thylacine or mammoth de-extinction is more about media attention for the scientists and less about being serious science. To recreate some version of the dodo, the scientists plan to edit genes from the Nicobar pigeon, the dodo's closest living relative. They have already successfully sequenced the extinct bird's genome from ancient DNA. Next, they hope to remove germ cells from an egg of a pigeon, edit the genes to make them more dodo-like, and implant the cells back into a pigeon egg. This technique has worked to breed chickens, but the dodo project is in new territory. Have they not learned from Corona about gene manipulating genes in any form? I mean, just because they think they're smarter than nature doesn't mean that they should go out there and do this stuff. The hard part jumping from chicken species, which many labs in the world do, to other species, Mike McCraw, who does gene editing in the University of Edinburgh, his own Colossus Scientific Advisory Board says to CNN, I've been trying for about 10 years to culture germ cells from other bird species, and it's hard. That's because you're not supposed to be doing it. Hello? Hey now, don't be messing with sardines. Hey, look, if we're going to save the snail darter, then some sardines must be sacrificed. All right, so you get going back and forth on this stuff. I guess my question is still why? Why would you want to bring back an elephant so that it can scratch through and the tundra, the permafrost? I don't understand why you feel the need that this is going to be some great scientific breakthrough and, you're going to be the best scientist in the world. What happens if you do the woolly mammoth thing to an elephant and they grow 30 feet tall because of well, I didn't think about that. Those two genes, they got along really well, and the next thing you know, they formed this other transfigural helix twaddle and made the elephant 30 feet tall. I don't think it's worth it. Then and that's probably already happened somewhere in far, far off land. They've probably already cloned humans, would be my guess, or manipulating the embryo to make it taller, shorter, smarter, faster, all those kind of things. I don't know. Maybe this is just all a cover-up for, learning how to clone humans or to perfect cloning humans. I bet it's already been done somewhere. I bet there's been attempts to do that. There has been somebody out there. There's a mad scientist out there somewhere that's doing that stuff. Yeah. Just like gain of function, somewhere out there, there's a lab tinkering around with the next baddest thing that's coming down the pike. Will they cross a frog lizard mammal combo? I don't know, man. Maybe this ancient civilization with the aliens is correct, and that's how we got the what? The duck-billed platypus. That's right. Maybe that was a gene sequencing tattoo nightmare back in the day. Nightmare, snafu. Follow along with me. You gotta learn the Minutes with Milo speak. Anyway, who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe we're all just a big petri dish of genetic material experimentation. I don't believe that, but some people do. Anyway, 54 minutes on me ranting on stop thinking you're smarter than nature. people need to work on curing, these pandemic diseases. And I mean really curing it, not just saying you cured it. Oh, my bad. Whoops. Let's try again. So you don't want one of those running around like, oh well, that mammoth just ran through the fence and bit that dude's head off, and now it's running across the tundra and going to mate with all the other elephants. We're smarter now. Let's try that again. Everybody needs to sit down and watch. How many of those Jurassic Park movies are there now? 3, 4? They all end the same way. They all start some way. Oh, we're smarter than nature. We can corral that. We can keep that under wraps. We can genetically alter it so it's peaceful and it likes to be petted. That kind of junk. So, anyway, let's stop cloning around and work on something that's really important. Really important. Yep. So, I want to leave you with this thought. Climate change is, let's just say we're going to happen. They've been predicting the end of the world since recorded history. People have predicted that this is going to kill us. The next 7 years, this is going to happen. Next 10 years, all that's going to be gone, and we're all going to be eating, bread and butter. All right. Would you rather have 100% wintertime or 100% summertime? Neither one of them's perfect, but how much corn could you grow at 30 degrees and below? None. How much corn could you grow from 80 to 90 degrees? I think probably more. Probably not as much as you could now, because I'm sure at some point, corn's going to, there'll be some heat tolerant varieties, and there's going to be some cold tolerant varieties. But I vote for warmer. To me, that makes more sense. If you're going to have climate change, you better watch what you wish for, because you may swing the pendulum towards the cold side. And the pendulum swings towards the cold side, buddy, that ain't nice. People will be walking over here from Russia looking for things to eat. We'll be, moving to, all this migration north would just like come to a abrupt halt, and whoosh, everything would be rolling towards the equator out the bottom. Because, you can't grow crap in the cold. Nothing grows really good in the cold. I'm not talking like 40s or, 50s or 40s. I'm talking if it swung that way from, like I said, 30 degrees on down, you'd just be screwed. That'd be all there was to it. So, I don't know. I just got to make it through tomorrow. Another Monday. Tomorrow's the second Monday of this week. We're going to hit it head on. All right. Geez, almost 58 minutes. That's hard to believe. All right. Thank you for watching. The two regular dudes. I called you regular. I don't know. We all know you're irregular. So, if you're watching it later, listening to it later, leave me a comment. Tell me what an idiot I am for thinking that cold weather's bad. Tell me what an idiot I am to think, man, just think of the sweaters that could be made with woolly mammoth. Is it hair? Is it fur? I've never petted one, so I can't tell you. But I guarantee you if there were woolly mammoths around, somebody would be shaving that stuff off and weaving it into yarn or whatever and making shirts and hats and mittens, shoes, underwear. They're going to be making stuff out of it. Maybe that's where we need to go. Alpacas, out the window. Sheep, out the window. Well, let's get some woolly mammoths and shave them bad mamma jammas down and make our pajamas out of it. Because if it goes cold, we may need some woolly mammoth hair to keep our tukuses warm. Anyway, Thursday, another show. Maybe it won't be so entertaining. Maybe it'll be more entertaining. I don't know. I won't be entertaining again until Friday after midnight. So anyway, all right, everybody. Thank you. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe. You know, tell your neighbor, tell your cellmate. Tell your warden. I don't care. Make him watch too. Anyway, Thursday night. See y'all later. Let's see if we can stop the stream. Have a good time this time. Ready, set, bye. Yeah. Why do you ask me again? I told you to stop.